Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. I haven't put anything on recently as I've just been continuing my journey round northern and then southern Spain. This video is just all about really to show you some of the places that I visited as I went around. We started off from the last video going to see the Castillo de Coca near Salamanca, which was a most magnificent castle. Frightened me to death looking over the moat where there's no railings, no health and safety, just a massive drop. I think it'd be interesting with a couple of small children running around. But a really interesting place, absolutely massive castle. It was fantastic. Then we moved on to Meridia, where there's still a lot of Roman ruins. Roman aqueduct is still there, and a lot of very old Roman buildings. There's a medieval bridge as well at one end, which was interesting. Some beautiful squares and plazas. We then drove down towards the south and went to see one of the reservoirs in a place called Badoj, where you could still see the snow on top of the mountains. And then from there we drove over to the Rio Tinto mines, which just completely blew me away. The sheer scale of this operation is bigger than I've ever seen anywhere. I mean, the drive through the base camp as such was incredible. You can see into the open mine. But they basically built a town to house everybody in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Schools, shops, churches, everything that they needed was built. And then one of the attractions, after looking around the museum, was to go on a small train journey which took us along the riverbed, which runs at one side of the mine. And again, it was just so fascinating. The river itself, as you will be able to see in the videos, the water is bright red. There is so much contamination, heavy metals, just general chemicals run off from the mine into the river, that it's completely and utterly toxic. And by all accounts, it seems that as the river moves south, the heavy metals start to drop into the sediment at the bottom of the river. And so by the time the river starts to join in with other rivers as it gets more and more towards the south, the toxicity levels disperse, and the water then is okay for recreational use. I find it incredible to think that that much pollution comes out of the river before it hits the ocean. But the train journey was really, really fascinating. You can see the old railway carriages and some of the old steam trains that have just been left to rot by the side. But just a fascinating 45-minute train journey on a rackety old train. And the guide was telling us that they even used some of the area to test some of the vehicles that we used for the lunar moon landings, because the terrain is so extreme. But the mine has been worked for thousands of years. But Rio Tinto, who now have mines all over the world, have really gone to town on this one. But as I say, really, really interesting journey through the valley. And we're just coming up to another section now where you can see just how red the water is, and it must be quite a sight when it's in full flow. It was obviously this time of year, there wasn't a lot of water going down the river, but I should think in the autumn when the rainy season's around, it's a very different spectacle. But as I said, the overall thing was that just the sheer scale of the operation. It just went on and on and on, a bit like I am on this video. But it truly was fascinating to see the extent. And other than the town, there is absolutely nobody living anywhere near this valley. There's plenty of trees and sort of forests up the side, but there's no sign of any houses whatsoever. So it must be a very toxic place to live. And there you can see again the river and the boulders and the general landscape. Anyway, then we went off for a little ride up to or down to Seville, which is was nice. But before that, we got to Salamanca, and this is the main square in Salamanca. Again, a very interesting place, big university town, with lots and lots of very interesting buildings. The famous one with all the shells on the side, which is part of the university. And it was a lovely walk around the town. It was incredibly busy, as most of these places are, but interesting, nice to see the architecture, nice place to stop for a bit of lunch, and watch the world go by, but really another very interesting place to have a walk around. We then had a little walk up towards the cathedral, which is actually two cathedrals. There is the original cathedral, and then they built the newer cathedral at the front of it. So you've got this huge Gothic cathedral on the front, and there's also a photograph of some carvings. And if you wanted to pause the video there, you can try and find the modern addition to the fresco on the front. It took me a while to find it, but it's quite interesting to see. The cathedral itself inside was absolutely magnificent, and it was well worth having a walk around, and then you literally step through a doorway and go into the smaller old cathedral, but really worthwhile. And as I say, we then moved on from Salamanca, went into a nice camping site at a place called Pucol near Valencia, after Seville, and a place called Sabiot, where I managed to buy some very good quality olive oil, which was a beautiful setting overlooking just mile after mile of olive trees. Real old Spain, there was a shepherd herding his sheep round the corner of the campsite. Castle on top of the hill. Just a lovely site with a really nice restaurant. Pucol near Valencia was a lovely seaside resort with a fantastic beach, but hardly anybody there at all. It was a really peaceful few days. The sun was out, it was glorious. Then we went down further up to Zaragoza, where again, fantastic cathedral, lots of impressive buildings round the plaza. Again, all these Spanish cities have great history, but for a single traveller, they really are just incredibly busy, and even getting a table in some of them is difficult. We then went up to Zaragoza, Huesca, and then drove up to Canfranc, which is the old railway station that has now been converted into a 5-star luxury hotel. The station was built because the railway line coming out of France was a different gauge to the railway line going into Spain. So all the passengers used to have to get off. But after the Second World War, the line fell into disrepair. The railway station became it was derelict, until it was taken over by this hotel group. And the day I visited, they wouldn't allow anybody other than hotel guests into the hotel. But it was really interesting to see the infrastructure round the hotel itself. The hotel itself was very impressive. I haven't had a look online, but I'm sure it's super expensive. And again, the day I was there was a rally going on featuring a few dozen Fiat 500 cars. And that was really interesting. It was also interesting to see, even at this time of year, there was still snow on some of the mountains. And after leaving Canfranc station, there literally is a very short drive, only a matter of 500 metres, until you reach the Stomport Tunnel. The Stomport Tunnel takes you through the Pyrenees, and I have to say the drive up to Canfranc through the Pyrenees was magnificent. But the Stomport Tunnel takes you, I think it's just over 5.5 miles through the Pyrenees, and at the latter stages, as you're going down into France, the tunnel actually takes you downhill. The gradient is quite steep, but it was a unique experience, and something that I'll remember for a long time. And then we obviously dropped into France, stopped in a few nice little places, stopped in Morgon, which is part of the Beaujolais wine region, up through the Burgundy wine region, and up to Champagne, where obviously I stopped and sampled a few glasses, which was very pleasant, in Epernay. Then up through Reims, up towards the Channel Tunnel, ready for return. So stopped in a nice place called Bray-sur-Somme, which is actually on the River Somme. Beautiful location, and just a nice place to stay for a few nights before the last drive up to Calais. So I hope you've enjoyed looking at this video. As usual, thank you very much for watching. If you've not subscribed, please do so. It really does help the channel. It's nice to see that these videos are getting a few followers now. They're only for a bit of fun, to show you where we've been, but it really has been a fantastic 3-month trip, and one that I would certainly do again. I think Spain outside of the Costas is a fantastic place to visit. Everywhere you go, there is something new to see, and as I say, I will certainly be doing it again. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye now.